Hello, and welcome to our second episode of Bookies TV. I'm Erica O'Rourke. I'm one of the Reader's Advisors here at Cook Library. I'm joined by Joe Hansen, one of our other Reader's Advisors, and we're delighted to welcome you back for today's episode, Family Matters. Each of the books we've chosen today has to do with family in some way, shape, or form, although it might not look like the families that you're used to. We can't wait to share these titles with you, so let's jump right in. Joe?
Thanks, Erica. My first title is called The Family Chow by Lan Samantha Chang, and it came out February 1st. The Family Chow is a gripping mystery, but also family drama about an immigrant family trying to make it in America. I think I was first drawn to The Family Chow because it takes place in Wisconsin, where I grew up. The author was raised in Appleton, Wisconsin, and draws upon her experiences living as a minority in an almost white town. I've got to say, the small town I grew up in really had no minorities. Big Leo Chow and his wife Winnie opened Fine Chow 35 years ago in this small town. They raised 3 sons who all went on to college on scholarships. They seem like the perfect immigrant success story. But as you read on, you learn about how the family faces subtle racism while trying to fit in. The 3 boys, Dago, Ming, and James, often dealt with bullying in school. After all these years, everyone loves their food, but the largely white community doesn't quite trust the family. After the Chow's big annual Christmas Eve party, Big Leo Chow dies after being locked in the restaurant freezer without the escape key. Was it an accident, or did someone kill him? He could be tyrannical and a bully, and lately had been fighting with his oldest son, Dagu. But there are other suspects to consider. And whatever happened to Elf, the family's adorable French bulldog who went missing? While this is a page-turning mystery, I enjoyed reading about the family dynamics the most. Many of the scenes are funny, while some are dark. It is harrowing yet humorous. And the food, they're always cooking wonderful recipes, and it really made me want to call for takeout. One read alike for The Family Chow is Miracle Creek by Angie Kim, about a Korean American family whose dream goes off the rails and ends up in a courtroom. If you like riveting, darkly humorous family dramas, give The Family Chow a try. Back to you, Erica.
I think that a lot of people on staff have read that book and absolutely raved about it. It seems to be heading for inclusion in the favorites list at the end of the year.
I think so. It's going to make my list.
Well, plenty of time to worry about that, because I know you're the one who puts that list together. So you don't have to think about it just yet.
Not quite yet.
So my first title is actually one that I chose as part of our spring book buzz. And I was very excited to read it before it came out. I got it in my hot little hands. I read it in a day and a half. It was so fantastic. It was also very different than what I anticipated. That book was The Sign for Home by Blair Fell. It's about deafblind Arlo, who lives under the thumb of his very controlling Jehovah's Witness uncle. And he gets a new interpreter when he enrolls in a creative writing class at the community college. And Cyril, his interpreter, gradually sort of helps him realize that his hearing companions, his uncle and his other interpreter, have been keeping secrets from him, have been making decisions for Arlo that weren't really theirs to make. And so as Cyril and Arlo sort of form this friendship, Arlo's world opens up, and he's ultimately inspired to go track down the girl who got away years and years ago. I came into this book expecting that it would be a romance. That's how it was presented when you read the flap copy. It really sounds like that's the focus of the book, is Arlo's quest to find this girl. But as it turns out, it's much more a coming of age story and found family. The quest to find the girl happens significantly later in the novel than you would anticipate, and it's not really the focus. Arlo's journey is the focus to independence and to figuring out who he is. It's told in 2 points of view, so you hear directly from Arlo, and his point of view is written in second person. So you walk into the classroom, your guide dog is next to you, and then it's also told from Cyril's point of view, and that's just, I think that's first person. But Arlo's voice is incredibly distinctive. He speaks as someone who grew up learning ASL and who didn't have a hearing background would construct his sentences. And that's because the author served as an ASL interpreter for more than 20 years. He really does a fantastic job of portraying the nuances and the variety of deafblind culture and of deaf culture. It's absolutely fascinating. All of the characters are well drawn. They have vulnerabilities and quirks, and they form this odd, sometimes abrasive little family. But in the end, it is such a hopeful, tender story. It's very funny. It's a little bit bawdy at times, and Cyril even kind of explains why that might be. But I can't stop talking about this book. Everybody I talk to, I'm like, oh, you have to read it. I said in the book buzz that I was in the mood for something really hopeful and optimistic. And that's what this book is, just a breath of fresh air in a spring that we are all still waiting on because it's cold and gray as we record this. I think if you enjoyed The Guncle or Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson, I think this is a great read alike for those books, and I hope you check it out.
Oh, that sounds really good. I want to read that, especially now that you tell me the romance isn't the main part of the story.
It's not. It's really not. It's very sweet, but it's definitely Arlo's journey is the focus and his friendship with Cyril.
Oh, that sounds great. I'm adding that to my to-read list.
To the list.
All right, now my next pick is called Memphis by Tara Stringfellow, and this just came out on April 25th, and I was lucky enough to score a copy. So Memphis is a compelling saga that takes place over 70 years about an African-American family. But it really is a love story to fierce, strong Black women who hold each other up in extreme difficulties. This debut novel opens in 1995 with Miriam returning to Memphis with her 2 daughters in tow to escape a violent marriage. Her sister August welcomes them back to the family homestead. The book then moves from different time periods to reveal each generation's story. The matriarch of the family is Hazel, who marries the love of her life, Myron, in the 1950s. He builds Hazel her dream house and becomes Memphis's first Black detective. But then Myron is murdered shortly after the house is finished and right before the birth of their daughter, Miriam. The community comes together to help raise Miriam while Hazel goes to school to become one of the first Black nurses in Memphis. I read on the author's website that she drew from her own family history for this plotline, so she understands heartbreak in community. Her grandfather actually was the first Black Memphis detective, and he was murdered. So it's like, wow, that these things really did happen. Some of my favorite characters are the Black women who support each other with advice, humor, and food. And of course, August has a Black beauty shop for women in the community. So they all come together and talk about things. And when something bad happens, casseroles and other dishes magically appear on their front porch. Stringfellow tackles racism, gangs, and sexual assault against the backdrop of neighborhoods, love, and survival. Read-alikes would be The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett or Red at the Bone by Jacqueline Woodson, who was our One Book, One Community author a year ago. If you like diverse, sweeping family dramas with a strong sense of place, read Memphis. This title also would be great for book clubs.
It sounds like a tough read, but a really meaningful one, really rewarding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I just really felt like I was in that community, and because of her descriptive writing and got to know these people and I just cared about them so much.
It sounds wonderful. All right, well, I'm going in a much lighter direction. My second title is The Portrait of a Thief by Grace Lee. And it's about a crew of Chinese American college students who are recruited to steal back ancient Chinese artifacts that were stolen, centuries ago and are now housed in the world's top museums. And so Will Chen and his crew are hired to steal them back and return them to China. It's absolutely a heist novel. It's got really inventive twists and turns. It is rare for me to be surprised by the plot twists in a mystery. I can usually predict, I bet such and such is going to happen. And in this case, I was absolutely delighted because each time that there was a twist I didn't expect, it opened the story up even more. And it was just a fantastic feeling. That being said, it is much more character driven than I think a lot of heist or con artist type novels are. You really learn about Will, his sister Irene, who's also part of the crew, the three other students. You really learn about them, their backstories, why they're agreeing to this series of heists, because clearly it comes with quite a risk, but they're all driven to do this for a variety of reasons. And in most cases, the reason isn't really the financial payoff. They're going to walk away with $50 million if they can pull this off. But they're by and large not doing it for the money. And instead, it becomes this story that talks about what it means to be an immigrant, what it means to be raised by immigrant parents, the pressure that you might feel, how it can feel to sort of have a foot in two worlds. Daniel, their safecracker, he lived in Beijing initially, and then he and his father moved to the States after his mother's death. And you see the difficulties that caused for him, and also how it gave him a fresh start. And so it turns into this really great portrait of all of these thieves and why they're doing what they do. I loved the variety of perspectives. I loved the idea that it wasn't just, there's not one single immigrant story. And this book really took time to explore 5 of the infinite permutations that there can be. And yet it's still a good mystery. Like, even with all of that emotional stuff, and there's really beautiful writing because it is a lot about art and why art is meaningful and what it means to a culture. But also it's still a heist. I will admit I peaked at the end. There were some things I needed to know before I could finish reading it.
Shame on you.
I know. But sometimes I just need to know, because otherwise I race through the story because I'm so worried about what's going to happen. I need to have that information so that I can enjoy what I'm reading. I will stand by it. It's not for every book, and I don't think every reader has to do it, but if you do, there's no shame in it. Read-alikes for this, I think, would be The Verifiers by Jane Peck and The Violin Conspiracy by Brendan Slocum, sort of those mysteries that also explore someone's marginalization, that are pretty fast-moving and very contemporary in feel. So highly recommend The Portrait of a Thief, and I can't wait to hear what other people think about it.
That sounds like another good one for my to-read list.
Absolutely. I think you'd really like it.
Yeah, I think I would too.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
So,
I love immigrant stories.
Yeah, it was just so well done. And I was delighted to see that the book came out last week, and I read yesterday that it had hit the New York Times list, which I'm delighted to hear. I think the more that happens, the more of these sort of authentic stories we get. So
That's
really
fantastic. So let me ask you, do you often do that? Go to the end and peek with books?
You know what? Only if it's really good. Because if it's really good and I care so much about the characters that I have to know what happens and I'm like super stressed about it, that's a sign that I'm completely immersed in the world of the story, and that I genuinely care about those characters.
That's really interesting because I have a rule of you never ever peek at the end till, check the ending. But sometimes I really want to. So maybe it is okay to do that.
You know what? I think everybody has to do what's right for them. For me, and this is again just me, I get so worried that I can't enjoy the book and I skim it. And that's a terrible thing to do to a book that you love. Like if you really enjoy it, you should be savoring it, not like, sure, but what happens? It's easier for me just to like look at the last couple of pages and make sure.
It's like, oh, okay, they didn't die in the end, or they made it.
I will not spoil the ending of Portrait of a Thief. I'm just saying that any book that makes me look at the end probably has done a really good job of engaging me. So
Yeah.
that's all I will say.
Okay.
All right. Well, whether like me, you peek at the end sometimes, or whether like Joe, you're an anti-spoiler purist, we'd love to hear about it. If you have any other questions about books, you're looking for another good read, please feel free to stop by the reference desk or go to www.cooklib.org/bookies. We've got a form there and you can request a personalized reading, all your likes and dislikes. So, and that's it for us for today. We hope to see you back next time.
Yep, come by. We're always reading something new, so come see us at the reference desk.
Yes, we are. Bye, everybody.